All right, experimenting with this live feature. I've never done it before. That's why I kind of wanted to mess around with it here. So, hi everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up in Scientology. And I've got kind of a short list of subjects here that I wanted to discuss, and I figured why not try giving the live streaming a shot and figuring out how it works. So, hi everybody. I've never done this before. I have no idea if it's going to let you comment on the video or ask questions, but in the meantime, I've got a couple things I wanted to discuss and subjects to go over, and I'll just talk until I see anything happening over here. Oh, look, you can comment. Hi there. Hi, Claire. So if you guys have questions for me that you just want me to answer, that's fine. If you have questions, hey there. If you have questions about what I'm talking about, go ahead and jump in. Hey there. And so let's see here. Guess I have to split my attention between my notes here and any questions that you ask, but I'm going to do my best. All right, let's see. Okay, this is a comment that from Michael Tilsey. It says, I know many ex-Scientologists have said that a Jonestown ending is unlikely for Scientology, but I think there are scenarios where it could happen. Not to public, but to Sea Org members. If David Miscavige said Earth was lost and the SPs were closing in and it was time to join LRH at Target 2 before the SPs could again implant, who would go? Okay, this is a great question. I just finished reading a book about Jonestown. It's a recent book, and it's called The Road to Jonestown, Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And as everybody knows, Jonestown was a city in South America, a little town in South America that Jim Jones had brought all of his followers to. And he had convinced them that government agents were out to basically crush them, and that it was an honorable death if they all went together. That suicide on an individual level was cowardice, but mass suicide was a political statement, and he had them believing this. And in fact, what I learned in the book is that they had actually done like several trial runs of this suicide effort. They had practiced it. There was a couple times where Jim Jones called his top people in, had them drink some wine, told them it was all poison and they'd be dead in 15 minutes, to see who would freak out and who wouldn't. In other words, this was his test of loyalty. And he'd done this a few times. And in addition to testing his inner circle like that, he had tested the group as a whole several times as well. Do you think Marty Rathbun is back in Scientology, or is he just shilling as part of his deal to end his case? Well, that's the same thing to me. So I guess let's figure out what the differentiation is there. Do I think Marty is going to rejoin the Church of Scientology in any public fashion? No. I personally think Marty is not completely stable mentally. I think what he's doing right now is he's doing it, one, for money, and two, his own warped sense of what he thinks is right and just. I think that he sees himself as sort of the father of this entire modern critic movement, and that there was a bunch of guys who took it further than he intended for it to be taken. In other words, he intended for the message to be fair and balanced, if you will, and he thinks that some people have gone so far over the line in their hatred of Scientology that they're not capable of having just an analytical, sober analysis or a conversation about it. This is totally my opinion. And that he feels his efforts have been usurped and turned into this thing that he thinks is ugly. And so I think that he would rather... and I think he's unemployable and has no way to make any money. So I think if the church throws some money at him and says they're going to give him a platform to speak, to tell his story the way he wants to tell it, I think he's just willing to cut that deal. I think the church would rather have Marty Rathbun give him a platform to be a non-Scientologist and say things only a non-Scientologist would say. I think they'd rather give him that platform if he's also willing to trash everyone else who's even further to the right of him, is how I'll put it. There's no good explanation. I think Marty's a coward. I think he is a piece of shit, to be honest, with what he's done. Anyone who would turn on their closest friends for no apparent, obvious reason is just a fucking piece of shit. So fuck him. All right, let me see. Oh, Jonestown. Okay, I have for the longest time said that Scientology could never have a Jonestown scenario, that international management could never have sort of a mass suicide thing. The reason for that statement, when I've said that, the reason I've given is that Scientology doesn't have any belief in the afterlife in a way that makes suicide make sense. Now, obviously, Scientology does believe in an afterlife in the sense that they believe you don't die when your body dies. But they don't believe in a greater... they believe that when you die, you're still here on Earth. You just go pick up another body. So there's nothing accomplished by having killed yourself. You don't go to some peaceful place where you reunite with all your former loved ones. Now, if that's also why, though, if someone has a real problem with their body, let's say they've got some sort of degenerative disease, let's say they're diagnosed with brain cancer or whatever, or someone's just getting really, really old, it's not unusual or out of the question or crazy for a Scientologist to try to maybe give someone a pep talk that it's okay to die. It's okay to willingly just drop your body. What are your thoughts about the Fishman version of OT3? Do you believe it's the original version of the level? Did this start? My screen is frozen on Aaron's face. Okay. I'm not aware of the different versions of OT3. OT8. Yeah, that's what you're talking about. So I think the public at large makes too much of the fact that LRH earlier in his life had some weird relationship with the occult and Aleister Crowley and all that kind of stuff. And I think too much is also made of the fact that the original OT8 material alluded to the Antichrist or whatever. I believe that when you read... I think that original material was edited just because people were having a hard time dealing with it. But I think if you actually just read what was written, he never actually says he's the Antichrist. He's trying to tell a story in relation to another story and explain how the pieces of this story fit into the pieces of that story. LRH... I do not believe the current version of OT8 is the same version that was released 30 years ago. And I also don't believe that the edits that were done are particularly important. The story behind these OT levels are not particularly important. It's the auditing action you do on the OT level that's supposed to be important in the context of the OT level. So if someone goes back and tinkers with the words or the explanation that LRH gives, that is the story behind the OT level. I know a through and through purist Scientologist would be like, that's heresy. You cannot mess with what LRH wrote. But as far as I'm concerned, knowing how auditing levels work and knowing how the indoctrination steps of the auditing levels work, it doesn't matter if someone went back and edited the theory portion of OT8. It just makes no difference. It doesn't change how OT8 is done, because when you say how is OT8 done, the auditing part of OT8 is how OT8 is done. The explanation part of OT8 that comes before the auditing is not as important as the auditing step itself. Okay, Jonestown. Listen, this is important. I was talking with a reporter recently, or not a reporter. She's not a professional reporter. She's a journalist student. She's writing something. And this is what occurred to me. The only way a Jonestown situation could occur at international management is if David Miscavige were able to convince the people up there that he had received new messages from L. Ron Hubbard. And most of Scientology believe L. Ron Hubbard has gone off to another planet to get Scientology started on another planet. He calls it Target 2. He doesn't say where Target 2 is exactly. And so most Scientologists think that LRH is off on another planet getting Scientology kickstarted while we finish the job on this planet. You know what I mean? While the Scientologists on this planet finish the job on this planet. If David Miscavige decided to tell Sea Org members and veteran Scientologists that new instructions have been received from LRH, and he says that this planet has been lost, the forces of evil and psychiatry have taken over, and it's beyond the point of no return. And instead of wasting our time here on this planet, he wants everyone to go join him on Target 2. You would absolutely get a portion of people willing to drop the body and go off and join LRH on Target 2. I'm just putting it out there as sort of an abstract, hypothetical possibility. That's what it would take in order to convince Scientologists or Sea Org members or the Sea Org members at international management to do a mass suicide the way Jonestown went down. I'm not ever saying that would happen. I'm not ever saying that would even make sense for David Miscavige to do that. I'm not saying it's a risk. I'm just saying that's what it would take. Okay. If you guys want to start throwing up questions, I'm happy to answer them. In the meantime, I'm going to focus on my notes here. So, okay, do you think Tom Cruise and John Travolta and Miscavige are in cahoots together and are just ripping people off for money? What's your view on this? Hello from Manchester. Hello! Okay, no, I do not believe that. David Miscavige absolutely knows that he is ripping people off. I don't believe that Tom Cruise feels that way. I don't believe he knows that's what he's doing. And John Travolta isn't even considered inside the inner circle. John Travolta's bisexuality has been used against him and held against him. Not used against him like blackmail. Has been held against him during his entire time in Scientology. John Travolta has all the time and money in the world, and yet he has never been allowed onto OT7. It's because of his bisexuality. David Miscavige doesn't even like John Travolta. He actually does not like John Travolta. John Travolta is 1.1. All right, yeah. Anyone who's gay or bisexual in Scientology is considered 1.1 on the emotional tone scale in Scientology, and 1.1 means covert hostility, and covert hostility is most easily described as someone who pretends to be your friend and smiles at you to your face, but is secretly plotting on how to stab you in the back. Okay, let's see. What kept me in Scientology time and time again? The Prison Planet story. Oh, this is what I've wanted to talk about for so long. In many ways, when I tell various parts of my story, I talk about myself as being the most ardent, at having been the most ardent believer in Scientology that one could possibly be. And in other respects, when I talk about certain parts of my story, I talk about aspects where I felt like I was never quite there on the same terms as the rest of some other people, that I never completely bought into the bullshit. And it might seem, depending on which of videos of mine that you've watched, that perhaps I was contradicting myself. It's interesting that both of these things can be true at the same time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that kept me in Scientology and in the Sea Org during times when I absolutely wanted to leave. And the reason this story is very important, in my opinion, is that it was never someone else sitting me down and convincing me that I needed to stay. It was always me sitting myself down and convincing myself and reminding myself about what was supposed to be important to convince myself to change my mind about wanting to leave. If you have not already watched my video, it's called something like The Matrix, Fundamentalist Scientology, and Disconnection. Please watch that video. That video is the true origin, not even origin story. Okay, I'm going to take a time out. In regards to Marty, I've gotten the impression that Marty has to be in charge and everyone should listen to him. And if they... sorry. Comment disappeared, repost. The Matrix video lays out how Scientology, per the story of Scientology, it explains what is the nature of reality, what is the nature of existence, what is the nature of life on this planet, what is the nature of human life, what are we really doing here, why are we here, and who put us here, and all that stuff. My 30-minute video about the Matrix and Scientology explains that. That is the real story of what Scientology has to say about Earth and life on Earth and what we're doing and what Scientology is trying to accomplish. And if you were to distill it all down into just a couple sound bites, it would be Earth is a prison, this is a prison planet, and we are all prisoners on it, and we don't know it. And that would be the most effective prison ever. Would be a prison that people are in where they don't even know it's a prison and they think they're free. And that's some pretty deep shit. And, this does relate to the story that you hear, the Xenu story, where Xenu rounded up a whole bunch of beings from all over the universe and brought them here and dumped them here and blew them up in volcanoes with hydrogen bombs and blah, 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 blah. Except that's the confidential story that Scientologists, 95% of Scientologists never hear. There's a much more public story that LRH tells about life on this planet. And it's very similar to that Xenu story. It's just that it's not so weird. Okay, I'm getting off on him. What's up with Marty Rathbun? Has he rejoined the cult? Well, everyone asked this question. You've talked a lot about Flag and Bay Blue. Is such iron fist ruling the same across the United States? Such iron fist ruling is the same across the United States in Sea Org organizations. Such iron fist ruling is not necessarily the case in Class 5 organizations. I live here in Ocala. Nice. The bookstore org is never open. How do they afford to keep from going under? Where does the money keep coming from? Oh, so a small little mission in Ocala is kept afloat because there's people with money who just pay the bills, like John Travolta. Isn't John Travolta the one who opened up that mission originally with Kelly Preston? Even if that mission is never open and it never makes any money, John Travolta is never going to embarrass himself by letting it close. He's just going to keep paying for it. Okay, so how I convinced myself to stay. There were times when I was in the Sea Org. Okay, do you think Scientology will ever reach the Middle East especially? Jesus Christ, no. No, Scientology will never get a foothold in the Middle East. There seems to be a large disconnect between what Scientology is to producing people in David Gavage. Sorry, guys, I can't. The comments go away too quickly. There were times when I was in the Sea Org where I wanted to leave. Israel, Scientology has a great presence in Israel. There are a lot of Israeli Scientologists. Scientology is quite popular amongst the Israelis. And so maybe I should stop telling this bigger story. Okay, when I was in the Sea Org, there were times that I would want to leave, and I would sit myself down, right? And I would go, okay, remind myself, why are we here? Why are we doing this? And I would remind myself of the prison planet story. And I would go, look, but believe it or don't believe it, but if you believe it, and if you believe that Scientology is the only thing that can actually wake the prisoners on this planet up and realize that they're in a prison and help them get out of the prison, then Scientology really is the only possible path and hope that people have to get out of this prison. And if that's the case, then what I'm doing here is the most important thing I could possibly be doing, regardless of whether I'm pissed off about not getting time off, pissed off about not being able to go home more often, pissed off about people being fucking assholes to each other all the time, pissed off about being blamed for everything that happens that you're not in control for, pissed off about this, pissed off about that. And I would just sit myself down and go, yeah, there's a lot of other things I could be doing. There's a lot of better things I could be doing. There's a lot of more rewarding and remunerative things I could be doing. But if this is true, then this is the most important thing I could be doing. And then I just sort of think about that long enough until my resolve that I did believe in this. And I resolved that it was the most important thing for me to be doing. And then that would sort of snap me out of whatever funk I was in or feeling shitty about, having to be there kind of against my will. What do you think will happen in the Garcia lawsuit? Will they ever get 3 Scientologists? The Garcia lawsuit's going to be fascinating. Okay, so the Garcia lawsuit. I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that this federal judge, that the church is digging themselves a hole they're not going to be able to get out of. A federal judge knowing that members of this religious group would be completely unwilling to lawfully cooperate with a federal judge without the permission of their church representatives, is the same thing as saying that church members hold Scientology law senior to U.S. law. And how the hell does the Church of Scientology think that's going to go down well with a federal judge? It is not going to go down well. And I think that once the federal judge does start contacting these Scientologists, and they are going to refuse to respond, he's going to realize it is not possible to get a fair arbitration within Scientology. I think he already realizes it. I think this is just sort of the process that has to be done in order to prove it. And that's what I think is going to happen. So, let's see. Do you think that videos like this ever reach David Miscavige? Absolutely they do. And if so, can you leave him a message here and now? Well, I think every video I do is a message to him, so that's fine. What do you think, Mike? How do you think Mike Grainer feels about Marty Rathbun is doing right now? So Mike probably feels that this is all the final evidence he needs to know that Marty did take money from the church. And Mike's hurt. Mike's hurt that he's been betrayed by his friend. That's my opinion. Okay, actually, I'm going to be in California next week. I'm going to be in Los Angeles almost all of next week, doing a couple little things for a little show. And if anyone wants to hang out, let me know. Shoot me a message on Facebook. Why did Scientology build buildings and then no one uses them? I'm pretty sure in a city those to me. Okay, Scientology is opening buildings for 2 reasons. One, they do by the way, if I don't address your question, then you have to understand that by the time I finish answering the previous question, your question is gone. So throw it back up when I'm done answering the question I'm answering. 2 reasons they buy the buildings. One, there are the laws governing a nonprofit are supposed to prohibit the nonprofit from just amassing money, because the definition of a nonprofit is you're operating for charitable purposes. You are accomplishing things that are supposed to help society, not just your members, but society. And if you're just amassing money, that's the opposite of a nonprofit. Nonprofits are allowed to make a profit. They're not supposed to just amass capital. So buying buildings accomplishes 2 things. It satisfies the IRS requirement that church money is spent on things that are that can be said to either be helping the membership or helping society. And buying large, beautiful buildings can be justified as an expense that's helping the membership, because you can say, well, we're growing our membership. You can say our current buildings are at capacity, and so buying this new building allows us to greater service our membership. So it's a justification. Now, of course, you pointed out the buildings are empty, and that's true. But then it gets to the second reason. Buying new buildings is a PR opportunity. Is it an opportunity for a press release? When you buy the building and you fully renovate it and you do the grand opening, you'll notice that in the press releases the church does, they do not say, we opened our newly renovated building. They say, we opened a new Church of Scientology. And your casual member of society does not know one way or the other whether this is a new Church of Scientology or not. All they see is the headline, if they see it anywhere. And it might leave them with an impression that, oh, Scientology is opening new churches. They must be expanding. Scientology has not opened any new churches in a long time. The only exception to that would be Harlem and Inglewood, except those churches were fully funded by the IAS and don't have anybody in them. And the net church count is still down. If you look at how many churches have been consolidated into one and it closed down, there are less churches today than there were 25 years ago. But you wouldn't know that from all the press releases the church puts out about all of the new churches they're opening all around the world. So those are the two things that are accomplished by constantly buying these big buildings and renovating them. And I guess the third purpose is also to the flock themselves, to the membership themselves. It makes them feel like Scientology is expanding all around the world, even if they don't see it expanding in their own backyard. Will the Church of Scientology cause downtown Clearwater to tank financially? No, they will not. I am also cautiously optimistic about what's happening in downtown Clearwater. I think that since the new flag building opened up, you just don't see that many Scientologists and Sea Org members walking down the street anymore in the business district, and there's a very good reason for that. The reason prior to the flag building opening up, the reason there were so many Scientologists and Sea Org members walking around all the time is because the mess hall where all the Sea Org members ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner was in the Clearwater Bank building on the corner of Cleveland and Fort Harrison. And yet they worked in the Fort Harrison building and in the Coachman building. And literally the Sea Org members had to all walk 1 to 3 blocks 3 times a day in order to eat their meals. And so you just had this crush of hundreds and hundreds of people walking down and across the streets at every mealtime. Well, now that the new flag building opened up, you no longer have that situation because the flag building has the mess hall inside of it. It's in one of the basement levels. And they have restaurants, and they have cafes, and they have the skywalk that connects the Superpower building to the Fort Harrison Hotel. In other words, there is almost no reason for a Scientologist or a Sea Org member to be walking down Cleveland Street between Myrtle and Fort Harrison, which is the downtown business district. So what the hell is my point here? My point here is that if there were just a handful more retail establishments like a bar, a restaurant, a sushi, whatever thing, that also had sidewalk seating, I believe you would see a lot of body traffic coming to downtown Clearwater. The Scientologists, then the Sea Org members specifically, I no longer believe are scaring away non-Scientologists from coming downtown. I think it was true before. I think it was true for so long that it is the reason why people have continued to stay away. But it's only because they're not really aware that it doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels like a ghost town now. But that's actually good. That's better than having 1,000 Sea Org members walking down the street 3 times a day. It's better to have it a ghost town because non-Scientologists could actually come downtown and not feel weird. Does Miscavige prefer midget or little person? I think he prefers little person. Clearwater needs their own body routers. You'd never have body routers in Clearwater because Flag is not a Church of Scientology where people are supposed to get into Scientology. And that's also why Flag and David Miscavige does not want non-Scientologists in downtown Clearwater because it doesn't benefit the church in any way. What's your opinion on Miscavige's reaction to Leah and Mike's Scientology show? Do you think he's flipping tables and screaming at people? Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah. Miscavige is losing his shit. He is not a temperamental person. He is the guy who will blame everybody around him for everything he cannot control, including things that they cannot control. The fact that this show is getting so much positive reviews, the reception has been incredible. Not only the viewership of the show, it's not the highest viewed show ever for A&E. It was the highest viewed debut for a docuseries in 2 years. It's highly viewed. It's not setting records for A&E, but what it is setting records for A&E is social media interaction. The A&E execs have said they have never, in the history of their programming, had a social media response to a program the way they've been getting to Leah's program. And to me, that shows engagement from the common people, the people who are actually just, they're paying attention, they care, and they want to do something. They want to be engaged. They want to help. And it's been phenomenal. And I was so glad to hear that Leah has been cast in Kevin James' new show, and I wish her all the success. Why do you think there are 3 people running the cult of anti-Scientology? So you're talking about Marty Rathbun's Troika video. Marty has some sort of agenda in whatever he's doing right now. He hasn't even clarified who he thinks the Troika is. I've heard 2 different opinions on who it's supposed to be. One opinion was Tony Ortega, Karen De La Carriere, and John Atag. I happen to think that's not true. I don't think that's who Marty Rathbun thinks the Troika is that runs all of what he calls the anti-Scientology cult. This is a hard subject to discuss because it implies I agree with certain basic premises. First of all, I reject Marty's concept of the anti-Scientology cult. That's stupid. Although I do know what he means. I think that when Marty says the anti-Scientology cult, he is talking about the people who are sort of in the group where LRH never did anything good, LRH never had a sincere intention, nobody's ever been helped in Scientology, there's not anything good in Scientology, and to say otherwise is outside of the accepted narrative. I understand what Marty's talking about. I don't subscribe to those beliefs. That's way too black and white. That is not nuanced enough. If it was that simple, people wouldn't stay in Scientology. And so it does bother me to listen to narratives from people who are not willing to acknowledge that there's anything helpful about Scientology at all. And I understand if Marty wants to say that's the anti-Scientology cult, where you're not allowed to say anything good about Scientology amongst those people or they're going to attack you. And that's true, and that's annoying. But I don't know who Marty thinks is the head of the anti-Scientology cult. If he wanted to say it's Tony Ortega, I could at least understand why he would say that. It's just that Tony Ortega is willing to acknowledge that there are positive things about Scientology. I consider Tony Ortega a friend. I've had private, casual conversations with him about this. I'm surprised if you just get Tony talking, what's the word? Just casually and openly. Tony Ortega is one of the smartest, most intelligent, most educated people on the subject of Scientology. And that includes people who've spent their entire lives in Scientology. I mean, the guy's capacity for knowledge and facts is fucking incredible. And I don't consider Tony to be like super militant, where he's not willing to say, anything positive about L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology or anything. Anyway, so I think I said it's hard for me to answer the Marty thing because there's sort of a lot of implications, whether I agree with some of the basic premises. All right, let me move on. If something ever happens to Miscavige, who do you think would take over? Yeah, it's impossible to say, right? Because there's so many minions up there. Jenny DeVocht is probably would be the easiest answer. But the thing is, Jenny's kind of an idiot. And Jenny DeVocht is one of the 3 people who approached Marty in that airport. And, Marty has that video where three Scientology execs approached him in an airport and were harassing him at the gate, and he recorded them. Jenny DeVocht was one of those women. And Jenny DeVocht was also one of the famous inchwives on Anderson Cooper. She was the one that used to be married to Tom DeVocht and said, I know every inch of his body. Wait, she didn't say inch. Okay, she didn't say inch. That would have been very cruel. And Jenny's been a David Miscavige acolyte for 25, 30 years. And if I were to just give a snap answer, who would replace him, it would be Jenny. But I've asked Mike about this, and he's like, Jenny's just too stupid to take over. And anyway, there's a handful of people, but you'd be surprised how many of those people have left. Greg Wilhair, would he take over? Maybe. So who really knows? I think Miscavige is a con man who rips people off. Do you seriously say that he believes in Scientology? Okay, this is a good question. Does David Miscavige believe in Scientology to the core, or is he just a con man? The problem is in thinking that those are the only 2 options. In many ways, David Miscavige does believe in Scientology. I guarantee you earlier on he believed in Scientology for sure. I think there's a chance that as he came to realize LRH himself had lied about a lot of things, that maybe Miscavige started to move along this spectrum towards moving from being a naive true believer to being someone who just gradually over time realized, okay, shit, this isn't quite as true as I thought it was, but I'm going to keep moving forward with this, and I'm going to leverage this to my advantage. And I think over time, his thinking has just sort of evolved into the point where if he truly believed in Scientology, he would still be getting auditing. And Claire Headley said that when she left the Sea Org, Miscavige had never even finished OT7, and he had not allowed himself to be audited in over 10 years. He had not allowed himself to be taken in session, even during times when he was ill and could just get an assist session. He just wouldn't allow himself to be audited. Now, LRH allowed himself to be audited all the time. So you have that kind of comparison. Will you ever be open to a conference call or video chat interviews? Oh, I do those frequently. I've done interviews with Jeffrey Augustine, Chris Shelton, Chris Crimey, and some others. So as of right now, does David Miscavige truly believe in Scientology? Look, I can only speak to his conduct. I can't get inside his head and see what he truly believes. I do not believe that David Miscavige today truly believes in Scientology. I don't see how it's possible. And here's why. If you truly believed in Scientology, then you believe that getting people up Scientology's bridge to total freedom is the only chance this planet has to continue to exist. Once the church has $3 billion, you'd have to go, you know what? We have enough money to protect ourselves from attacks from the government. I think it's time to shut the doors for a little bit, take the 6,000 Sea Org members in the world, and get them all through OT 7 and 8 for fucking free. If you think that the Scientology bridge to total freedom is the only salvation this mankind has, then you would do anything possible to remove the barriers to people going up the bridge. And yet David Miscavige has only put barriers to getting people up the bridge. He's made it more expensive. He's made it take more time. He's made people redo levels. The Sea Org members, there's probably 4,000 to 5,000 of them right now. They're the most dedicated Scientologists in the world. If you just gave them 2 or 3 years to focus and dedicate their efforts to getting over the bridge, you'd have over 10,000 people completed on OT7, which is supposed to be Scientology's definition of what it takes to clear the planet. Scientology says that once 10,000 people have completed OT7, enough body thetans and whatever will be cleared and woken up that we'll be on the way to a cleared planet. And yet, after 30 years, there's not even 5,000 people that have finished OT7. But all Miscavige would have to do is take the 6,000 Sea Org members and let them audit each other up the bridge to OT7. The audio is fucked up? No way. Is it really? If the audio is fucked up, please more people comment and let me know, because I don't know what to do about that. Do you think we would pass a lie detector test? I don't know. Okay, good. Audio's good. Yay! All right. Hit me with some more questions. What happens to cleared body thetans? Okay, let's see. This touches on another thing I wanted to speak about. In one of my videos, I said that, so a couple things. I had done a video where I commented where when a thetan drops the body, when someone was getting old, if someone's getting old and they're going to die, that it's not uncommon for a Scientologist related to the person who's about to die to go to some of these Scientology networking, either websites or Facebook groups or whatever, and find a Scientology couple that's about to have a baby and get them connected up with this Scientologist that's about to die, and have them sort of make this spiritual agreement that where the new expecting couple tells the guy who's about to die, we would love to have you as our new son or daughter. And so please, so they make it like a theta agreement, a spiritual agreement, that this guy that's about to die can inhabit their baby's body. And then someone asked me a question, why would you have to strike an agreement in order to occupy the body? Is there like a thetan fight for the body? And then I was explaining how, no, not really. And then someone said, well, wait a second, someone said, are all the body thetans fighting to occupy the same body? And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So, and then I said, no, when you hear of body thetans, those are thetans that are almost dead. They're supposed to be thetans that are almost completely unconscious. Those are the thetans that were supposed to be blown up in the hydrogen bombs by Xenu 75 million bazillion years ago or whatever. Body thetans aren't up to controlling a body. All they can do is stick themselves to bodies. So us thetans, who are here on Earth occupying bodies, are not the same thetans that were blown up in the volcanoes in the Xenu story. And then someone asked me a question of like, how can both of these things be true? Okay, so there's two different stories, and one is the confidential story that most Scientologists never hear about, the OT3 story, and the other one is like the public story. Any Scientologist can read, listen to lectures from L. Ron Hubbard talking about the galactic invader forces and the artists and the rebels and the artists. What did he say? The poets, the artists, the people who are really good communicators, and rounding up those people and sending them to Earth as a prison. LRH does say that publicly. He never draws a direct line between that story of the invader forces gathering up all the troublemakers and sending them to Earth as a prison planet. He never draws a hard line between that story and the Xenu story, because he doesn't have to, because the Xenu story is highly confidential and no one's even allowed to discuss it. So once you get onto OT3 and you read the Xenu story, there's not like there's any conversation that takes place that tells you how does this connect to what all the other Scientologists believe. Like, because now you have two categories of thetans. In the story that LRH says publicly, we're all just normal thetans that were rounded up and sent here to prison, which is Earth. But then on OT3, you have this other category of thetan, which is the body thetan, which is the thetan that was blown up in these hydrogen bombs and is stuck to your body. Now you've got two categories of thetans. Anyway, I don't know if I actually answered any questions there, but that's kind of all I have to say about that. All right. I think I said, do you think David Miscavige knows who you are? I know David Miscavige knows who I am. He knew who I was when I was still in the church. Don't you think Scientology immediately revealed itself to be a fraud when the story about the DC-8 was presented to you as part of an OT briefing? Wasn't that at least cause for doubt? Okay. I was never exposed to the OT3 story when I was in Scientology. And if you believe the core story of Scientology, which is explained in my video about the Matrix and Scientology and disconnection, if you believe that story, then the thing about the DC-8 airplanes, it sounds ridiculous, is not hard to believe. It's not weird. It's not unusual. Scientologists' view about life in the universe is very similar to how it's portrayed in the Star Wars universe. And what I mean by that is life can take all sorts of forms, humanoid, non-humanoid, that life exists on all planets everywhere. And so the idea, and LRH has also said that because this civilization on Earth, this society, has basically been built up from scratch by us who are ourselves from other ET societies. LRH's explanation is that we have created on this planet things that are very similar, if not identical, to the way things were on other planets. So it's not the other way around. It's not like, well, isn't that weird that aliens would have the same DC-8 airplanes that we do? Like, that seems weird. LRH's explanation would be, no, we developed airplanes that inadvertently looked exactly like the spaceships that they were using or whatever. Okay, let's see. Plastic surgery. Personally, I don't believe that David Miscavige has had actual plastic surgery, like a nose job or a lift or anything. He might have had Botox, and he might have had fillers. I don't know if that qualifies as plastic surgery, but I mean like actually going under the knife. I personally don't think so. Can't swear to it though. Okay, hit me with some questions. I see a lot of them popping up and they kind of go away. How do you feel about independent Scientology? You said a lot about Xenu and stuff is bullshit. A lot. You said that Xenu. Right. Well, okay. My mom is an independent Scientology auditor. I do not participate in independent Scientology in any way. I just have no interest in it. I didn't even have interest in auditing when I was in Scientology. And that's an example where I said sometimes I say things that make it seem like I never really bought into the bullshit. I didn't want auditing even though I did buy into the bullshit about why I should want auditing. I didn't know what to do about the fact that I didn't want auditing. I don't really love talking about myself. I sure as fuck aren't interested in telling people my secrets. And So I never wanted to get auditing. But I knew that in order to get to OT, which I did want to do, I would eventually need to get auditing. So I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll get over this eventually. So Independent Scientology. Look, I think Scientology is capable of helping people, not the OT levels and not the state of clear. The lower levels of Scientology auditing deal with communication, problems, change, fixed conditions, memory. And if a normal Scientology auditor is just trying to help a normal person, and it's like counseling. It's just like counseling. It's like a life coach session. And you can say what you will about whether it's scientifically correct. It's scientifically bullshit. But something doesn't have to be scientifically correct in order to actually be helpful. And by that, I'm talking about the placebo effect. I've gotten my mom to admit that Scientology auditing only works if you want it to work. LRH says that. You need to have a willing and cooperative pre-clear. And I've also gotten her to admit that if something only works if you want it to work, then it's the opposite of a science. That is positive reinforcement, positive confirmation bias. It's bullshit. But even bullshit can help people. So that's why I don't fight independent Scientology. If someone said to me, should I get auditing? I'd say no, don't bother. If someone said to me, I want to get auditing, who should I see? I'd be like, go see my mom. Like, it's not my job to keep people from getting auditing. It doesn't bother me if people want auditing. Do you know what I mean? All right, hit me with some more questions here. I think I've got about 10 minutes before I gotta kind of check out. Scientology had a shift in marketing, branding in order to account for the extremely negative press it had over the recent years, or are they so arrogant and so deep down? Well, actually, they have been doing well, you've seen their commercials. Their commercials, their branding, I don't know that their branding has specifically been changed to counteract the negative information. I think they've just tried to step up their game. I think they know that the negative information that's out there is going to be most likely consumed by the younger millennial generation or below. And so I think their advertising is more geared towards that generation. Their advertising is trying to be very hip and young and diverse and very trying to push technology and spirituality. It's trying to not make it so religious. They want to be the coolest religion on earth. And that is also reflected in their t-shirts that says Scientology, the coolest religion on earth. Like, what the fuck? Who do you think's buying that bullshit? Okay, are Jews in Scientology? Tons of Jews are in Scientology. The only way I can explain that is that I think Judaism is the one religion that doesn't require you to believe very much. If someone thinks I'm full of shit, go ahead and mention it in the comments. But, you know, the Jews that I know who are in Scientology, they don't believe in God. They're just Jewish because their heritage is Jewish. They're Jewish because they're from Israel. They're Jewish. I don't know. It doesn't require much to be Jewish. You don't have to go to temple to be Jewish. I guess you don't have to go to church to be Christian. But it's the one exception. There's no Christians in Scientology. There are Jews in Scientology. It's just, how do you define whether you're Christian or Jewish, you know? I don't mean, obviously you can define it. I mean, what does it take to be a Christian? I'm not a Christian, but I celebrate Christmas. The Jews that I know in Scientology don't go to temple, but they do celebrate Hanukkah. So I guess the fact that they celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas is really all that makes them Jewish. Other than their heritage. Okay, is DM still beating people? I would be fucking shocked if he's still beating people. He has to know that everyone he hits today is someone that could blow and talk to the media tomorrow. I really doubt he's still hitting people. We are born to it and don't need to believe. That's true. Yeah, you don't have to believe in anything really to be Jewish. My name is Aaron Levin, and the only reason it's Aaron Smith-Levin is because my mom just had to have her name on my birth certificate. Aaron Levin is one of the most Jewish names there can be, so I've always considered myself to be an honorary Jew, for what it's worth. All right, hit me with some more questions. Anything at all. Let's see. I have my question list here, but it's not very well organized. How much money do you think you made from? For Scientology, how much money do you think you made from? I don't know what that means. What do you think of the objectives? Would you go back? I'll never. No, I would never go back to Scientology. Thoughts of Katie Holmes having her non-disclosure lifted? That'll never happen. What sort of programming will the new Scientology channel have? No idea. If you had to choose a cult, which one would it be? Pass. Downtown Clearwater tune lapse footage. How's it going? Oh, I took some more last night. How can we help your cause? Honestly, help get the word out on Leah's show. I don't think Leah's show is probably the most effective thing that is happening right now. Help tweet about it when it's on the air. I mean, honestly, when people ask me that, that's what I say, is just help that show, help get the word out. Look at the previous questions. I don't know how to look at previous questions. Did the Knot document leak 96 leave anywhere? The Knots. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question. Are poor people in third world countries that Scientology supposedly helps becoming Scientologists? No. First of all, Scientology does not really go to these poor countries and help anyone. They just hand out booklets that the people probably can't even read. They're only there to do photo ops. They're not there to get people into Scientology. They can't afford Scientology. Even in those countries, they could not afford Scientology. If you have to go to a disaster zone where people are living in huts and there's been a landslide, those guys aren't going into a Scientology org to get auditing. Let's be real. What will be the future for Scientology? They'll continue to dwindle in numbers. They will, I don't think Scientology will ever go away. I mean, the Nazi party still exists. The KKK still exists. I just watched the documentary The Keepers. And I'm sitting here watching this documentary and I'm going, I'm sorry. If you can systemically rape children, organize gang rapes of children, murder nuns, cover it up, and have it be exposed and still survive that, Scientology's got nothing to worry about. So, I don't expect the government to jump in and shut down Scientology. What I do expect, people have asked me, well, what's your end game? What's your end game? I go, there isn't an end game. The end game is being able and enjoying the process of having an honest public conversation about Scientology that you're not able to have when you're in Scientology. I enjoy answering people's questions. I enjoy clarifying things that the media generally gets wrong. I enjoy explaining the other side of an argument and taking the devil's advocate position. I think the more people understand Scientology, the more... it always rubs me the wrong way when people walk away from certain documentaries or whatever and go, oh God, you'd have to be fucking insane to be in Scientology. If that's how you feel, you've missed the point. You can't just write someone off as, oh, you'd have to be insane to do that. If that's how you feel, you've missed the point. And if that's the effect that a show creates, then it has missed the point. You have to be able to understand why people do what they do in order to have empathy for them. And that's, I guess, what I feel like I'm kind of contributing in my own way by explaining how Scientologists think about things and why they do certain things. It's not good enough to just say they're fucking crazy. All right, hit me with some more questions. Hit me with a couple more, because then I'm going to have to check off in about 5 minutes here. I do not speak that language. Has anyone thought about a way to check on the well-being of Hebergench? Not going to happen. If Scientologists believe that LRH is not coming back this lifetime, why does he have a huge compound built for him? He doesn't have a huge compound built for him. There's the International Management Base, which is where international headquarters is located. That base would exist regardless of whether L. Ron Hubbard is coming back or not. Now, it is true that there is a house on that property that is kept up for him. And this is an important thing to understand, is most Scientologists believe LRH is not supposed to come back. It was a surprise to me when I learned from Mike Rinder and from other people at International Management that the people at International Management were told that L. Ron Hubbard was coming back. And you can imagine, as someone who grew up my entire life in Scientology, that was the first time I'd ever heard that. And that was surprising. And it was honestly a little embarrassing that anybody could have believed that that is what was going to happen. How do you prove you were L. Ron Hubbard, right? And actually, that's one of the things that made the South Park episode so funny when, I think, was it Kyle who got into Scientology? He did the personality test, and then they're like, oh my God, his test scores are off the chart. He's L. Ron Hubbard. He's the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard. God, that was a funny episode. Don't be embarrassed to be empathetic. I'm not embarrassed to be empathetic. Stan got into Scientology. Thank you so much. Do you have any updates on the Scientology TV project? Well, I don't have any updates because they're not keeping me in the loop on that. But, oh my God, I am so looking forward to whatever goes on this channel, you guys. I am so looking forward to it. Scientology is becoming a caricature of everything I felt Scientology was not supposed to be. We weren't supposed... First of all, Scientologists, when I was in Scientology... Oh, yes, I'll be doing Q&As like this. This is fun. If you did not have to have religious recognition in order to become a tax-exempt group, in the case of Scientology, Scientologists would not give a fuck if you called it a religion. When I was on staff, when I was in the Sea Org, when I was in Scientology, we did not have a button on being religious. In fact, it was a burden that we sort of had to act like we were a religion. The day-to-day activity of a Sea Org member has nothing to do with any religious activity, aside from the fact that auditing is considered a religious activity. Like I said, the only reason Scientology goes through so much effort to project itself as a church-ish group is that that's what's necessary in order to get the tax-exempt status. How do you explain very rich people that donate millions to the church? Some of these guys are very tough. Watch my video called The Matrix. I've changed the name a couple times, but The Matrix is in the title. It's like The Matrix, Fundamentalist Scientology, and Enforced Disconnection. It will explain how if you get someone to believe that story, it doesn't matter how rich you are, how educated you are. If you can get someone to believe that story, then they will do anything to support Scientology, including like Bob Duggan, who's donated almost $100 million to the Church of Scientology. And do you think Tom Cruise will ever leave Scientology? I don't, personally. All right, I think I gotta go. Yeah, this is fun. I'll do this often. I'm not sure how, is there an email that gets sent out when I hit go live? Is there, does my subscriber base get an alert? I don't. How did you guys find out? Comment real quick. How did you guys find out that I was doing a live feed? What happened? Do you get like a little text message or something? Subscribers, I get an alert. Okay, cool. I don't know. Does it go out on Twitter? I don't know. Email from YouTube. Sweet. All right, guys. Well, hey, I'm going to be in Los Angeles next week, and maybe I can do one of these. Actually, me and Chris Shelton are planning on doing a live stream together to answer questions. It should be a lot of fun. No, that's not next. Next week I'm in LA. The week after that, I'm going to be in Denver for the weekend for Tony Ortega's little get-together. And Chris Shelton and I are going to do a live stream together, which should be great. All right, guys. That's all I got for now. See you soon. Bye-bye.